So before we get into the product, I want to talk about you because you're an interesting dude. Um, First of all, we want to know who's Vince, right? You started this security company. We need to know that you're not just some guy with some money who thinks he's going to start a computer security consulting company and get rich quick scheme, all that kind of stuff. Tell us a little about your background.
Yeah, my background, I've been in technology since before I could drive. Grew up in a small town in southeastern Ohio, and a female entrepreneur in our town that owned the video store. She started the first internet service provider there, and as a high schooler, I was hired on to be system admin, web design, and so I've just loved computers, technology, security ever since. Computer science major in college, commissioned as an Air Force officer. Spent 6.5 years in the Air Force as a communications officer in Germany, went to the Pentagon, and then eventually ended up at the White House.
All right, now ended up at the White House. That sounds cool. So what did you do at the White House?
So I had an opportunity to serve there as the Chief Information Security Officer. It was IT security for the unclassified networks of the organization that's formally known as the Executive Office of the President. But it's the White House itself.
And with you doing the, what did you say, the unclassified documents?
Correct.
That means you
networks.
You didn't get to see the documents about the aliens and the conspiracy, all the conspiracy theory stuff. You just saw actual crazy people messages.
Yeah, I mean the security for the UFOs and alien infrastructure is a different job.
Right. So what was the most interesting thing that you saw security based, not like, what the president was wearing or something?
I came to the White House in 2007, and this was a really important time for our nation. President Bush at the time actually had launched this initiative called CINCI, the Comprehensive National Cybersecurity Initiative. And that was launched because it was finally starting to be realized that big, sophisticated nation state actors were targeting our infrastructure. And so to be serving at the White House during that time was fascinating. When I showed up in 2007, there wasn't 24/7 monitoring of the unclassified network. They didn't have a SOC. I mean, they had, a handful of folks that were responsible for protecting it during the day. The folks that were protecting it, didn't have the highest security clearance. And because of my previous job at the Pentagon, I had a very high security clearance. It was in an organization called the National Military Command Center, which is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff Command Center. So I'd been read on at the highest security levels about what was going on with these nation state hacks. And so to show up at the White House and to have the security team not fully aware of what was going on was fascinating. And so it was an incredible team of folks. I still stay in touch with them today. They're just brilliant people. But together we were able to build a 24/7 SOC, overhaul the infrastructure, and get that stuff moving to protect, what I would consider one of the most important institutions in the country.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your stance there.
As far as favorite moments, like I was helping, I came in as an Air Force officer and then stayed as a civilian.
Mm-hmm.
And I was non-political. So I got to stay through from the Bush administration to the Obama administration. So, one of my favorite memories was like during the inauguration parade, walking kind of the basement of the White House as the parade and the music was going by, and kind of being there at this, like the largest peaceful transfer of power in the world, and just kind of being a part of it. It was a pretty meaningful moment.
I would say that's powerful for you to be there behind the scenes and have a role in this. And if you think about it, you had the privilege of helping to make that peaceful transition happen. You weren't the guy on the podium or at the lectern or whatever, right? But you were on the back end making sure that, Office A and Office B were able to connect, over the network and transfer data and set up. You probably were setting up users and passwords and all that kind of stuff. Like,
we had an incredible team of IT support folks and security folks that worked. I mean, by the end they were working 16 to 18 hours a day just to make sure that the previous administration was leaving the right way and the new administration was getting on board the right way. There's probably one of the most chaotic, hectic, and crazy, but also fulfilling experiences of my life to support
Oh, absolutely.
that. Yeah.
So what was Obama's password?
He used QWERTY123 just because, he had big hands and he could do it all with one hand.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So besides that question, what is the most ridiculous thing that you saw when you were at the White House? That won't get you in trouble for saying it.
That's a good question. I mean, in IT security and IT admin, you get all sorts of users doing crazy things.
Mm-hmm.
I think having a very prominent person in the West Wing that, really wanted to listen to this, and this was, think 2007. So like streaming stuff, it was not prominent at the point. They really wanted to stream music from this unknown site, right? And so to take this high-level political appointee that basically has the direct ear of the president and tell him, I'm sorry, you can't have access to that. And to have like them throw a fit, it's like, okay, you're down the hallway from the president. Like you gotta behave a little bit differently. So like those sorts of experiences, but in general, like the politicals, they were incredible people working, long hours doing an incredible mission there.
So did you ever have to tell the president no?
No.
Did you ever even speak with
the
president?
Not my job. I was before I was the CISO at the White House, I was a presidential communications officer with a group called the White House Communications Agency. Mm-hmm. So I was actually on the road with President Bush for about 6 months. You do advance work to all sorts of locations. And so I was within arm's length of the president a number of times. And when I actually separated from the military, people in that unit get their picture taken with the president. Mm-hmm. So my wife and I got to go into the Oval and, talk with President Bush, 43 at the time, and, get our picture taken with him. And he was just a great, funny guy.
That's awesome.
Great personality. It was pretty neat.
I love hearing that kind of stuff, man. All right.